Hello, and my name is Mr. Schweitzer. This is a pre-lab sort of initial lab setup for not only your lab book, but lab in general, and for the copper and brimstone lab. First of all, as far as safety concerns, this is a Bunsen burner lab. So a few things you're going to want to make sure you're up to date on is one, watch the Bunsen burner video if you have not done so far. All safety precautions for Bunsen burners are in effect. Long hair must be tied back, sleeves have to be rolled up. Big concern right there, make sure you're ready for that. We're also going to be heating test tubes, so you're going to want to make sure you watch that test tube video. Knowing and completing your pre-lab might even be as critical of a safety concern. Knowing what you're doing in lab is of the utmost importance. Okay? So I'm going to walk through the pre-lab materials and what you need to do for your pre-lab first, and then we'll talk about some of the lab specifics. You'll find in your lab book, in this case one of your initial labs, is called the Copper and Brimstone Lab. Now whether this lab is provided in a lab book or maybe even just provided online, that's up to how things go in the future, but you'd want to make sure to read through this lab. All the instructions are provided here. Now you'll notice some instructions might change over time, so I'm not concerned about that as much at this point. But in this case, it gives sample data tables, has some questions here, the procedure, and then the back page is going to be a data collection page. Regardless of how things change, you'll always be recording data in lab, in hand. It has a title, has a procedure section, and it has a data section. The rest of it will be completed in an online format. This is what you will be working with in lab. When you show up to lab, you'll want to have your headings completed. I'll talk about that in a moment, and your procedure, and I'll talk about that in a moment as well. Read the lab over, and to do the pre-lab, okay, now on the board here, I'm just going to kind of mention a few things as far as the pre-lab is concerned. One, it should be your name on the headings. This is just in your pre-lab, okay? Name should be your partner's name. You may have just received your partner as you're walking in, so be aware of that. The title and the date. All those things should be in the heading of your pre-lab workbook. Your procedure in here, of course your procedure is written in your particular lab pages. I need to be aware that you have read the material and then have digested it and understand how it's going to work. So the way I try to make sure that you know this is by drawing pictures in the procedure as far as what you are supposed to do. Okay? So for example, and I'm going to start on the board here and work my way across, and this is an example. There's many right ways to do this. Okay, so the pictures are for you, but safety is my number one concern here, so you know what you're doing. The very first page, I'm just going to go right to the actual copper and brimstone lab. It says, the very first part one, obtain your materials. Okay, and I'm just paraphrasing what the procedure says, and you can read that. Number two says weigh out a sample of 4.5 grams and 1.0 grams of copper and sulfur respectively. So that's the first thing you're physically going to do. So what I would do is I would, in my procedure section, draw out a picture. Okay. Now again, might be hard to see that, but again, it doesn't matter. This is a box with a seal on top, and I'm going to use pictures. So I might just say, okay, I might use, let's say, 4.5 of the copper and then 1.0 of the sulfur. Okay, so again, these are crude pictures, but it just doesn't, it's for you. It's for your, it says that you know what you're doing and you've regurgitating it to me, so I know you know what you're doing. The next step, it says to observe the copper and sulfur and note some of the physical properties in the data table. So you have a fake data table in your lab manual. You want to create your own data table. Here's the fake one, but in your data section of your lab write-up, you'll want to record down a data table. I usually draw like a pencil, meaning that this means I'm going to record down or observe some data. Okay. Step 3 says pour sample of sulfur and copper into test tube. Okay. So now I might draw another picture that has a test tube showing that I'm dumping the contents in there. Okay, so that's my next step. Step 5 says cover the open end of the test tube with aluminum foil squares and secure. So maybe the next step is going to show the test tube with little cover over the top. Okay, and this is the general idea, okay, of how you draw your pictures. So you should have your headings completed, pictures drawn out, and I would suggest in mock data tables, you know what information you're supposed to be gathering at this point. As far as the actual lab is concerned, here is an example of the test tube covered. Now the test tube is dirty. It's okay that it's dirty. Okay. Here's a rubber band. It's covering aluminum foil over the top. A few things I just kind of want to mention here is this is a ring stand with a clamp on it, and we'd want to, when I put this in like so, okay, secure down, and you can play around with these various knobs to get what you want. Don't point the test tube towards anybody. Okay. If pressure builds up, this could pop off. It's not meant to be an air seal. Just kind of keep things generally inside. If we heat this thing, I want the flame to come up here and not burn my fingers, little rubberized fingers here, so be aware of that. When this thing gets hot, when the end, after a reaction takes place, gets hot, we want to try and get this thing out of here. You can tap this down onto your lab to try and dislodge the new material. If it doesn't come out, then we're going to break the test tube to get it open. So we reuse these test tubes every year and add a few more. What you want to do is wrap this thing in paper toweling, okay, so the ends are somewhat secured, and we're going to just hit this thing with a ring stand, or should I say a ring of a ring stand, break it, unravel it, remove your new material, inspect it of course as the instructions are provided, record your data, and then roll the paper towel and put it in the glass waste container. So this is our first lab. A few things we covered here are some safety concerns for this particular lab, okay, and how to set your lab book so when you come to the lab you're all ready to go. And we've also talked about a few things involving the setup of the copper and brimstone lab. We will not be covering this in class, so this is for your knowledge and things you have to be expected to do this when you come to class. Okay? Thank you.